no, even though I necessarily had to do those things, like wishing that he wasn't around anymore because he was suffering so badly.
Yeah.
You come out of that situation, and if you don't unpack all those feelings, like I really did not like myself. I felt like I let him down. I felt like I lied to him. I felt like I could have saved him if I tried harder, that I didn't spend enough time with him. But these were not conscious thoughts. It wasn't like that is how I felt. But getting into the second relationship was completely right for someone to basically tell me all the things I was already feeling myself. You're not a good mom. You're not a good person. Nobody likes you. You're, emotionally too much. You're whatever it was.
Yeah.
I felt like I deserved it. I truly felt like he was mirroring all the things that I felt about myself. And I think that that's a trap you can fall into if you don't understand how you yourself feel. And I didn't. I had no idea that I was carrying all of that baggage.
Hello, and welcome to the F.E.E.L Podcast. I'm Melissa Crook, your host. I'm back here with a new friend that I met via our good friends at Podmatch. Julie Barth has a remarkable story of survival, of perseverance, of she's a change agent. And I'll get to that in a minute. And she came to a point where she knew it was time to fight for herself and her family and her children. And she did that, but not without a lot of bumps and really harmful experiences along the way that far too many women have this experience. And Julie's here to help not only herself, which she has done, but other women in understanding when they are in toxic relationships and knowing they're not alone, and support and resources to help them free themselves from those. She describes herself as a change agent for those toxic relationships. She is empathetic and she is outspoken. Julie Barth, welcome to the F.E.E.L Podcast.
Hi, Melissa. Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy to have you here. Let's start with self-care. And at what point you realized this had to become a priority for you if you were going to be able to move forward in a healthy way?
I wasn't expecting that first question. I would honestly say I'm still learning.
Yeah.
That has been probably one of the hardest lessons I am trying to learn is to first accept help, because I do not accept help. And secondly, to put myself, that phrase that you can't help others but I, being the mother of 6 and a caregiver at heart, because that's been my life. It's like, when people ask me that, it's not as if you wake up and you can consciously be, and I know some people probably do. Even if I put aside like 12 to 12:30, my daughter will call and say like, I forgot my gym uniform. So I think self-care is more for me, affirming what my purpose here is. When I start really feeling down or I feel like I need some headspace, looking over things that I've done or ways that people have reached out to me and said like, you helped me do this, or I left, or whatever it is, that's self-care for me, however
I
little
love that
is.
No, I think it's a counting the wins thing. I mean, it's something that I've started doing is not missing those wins, those ways that you've had impact. I would say too, self-care for you, based on how I've heard your story, is you chose yourself. You got to a point where you chose you. Talk to me about what it was like to finally to do that and know that it was necessary.
I think that the only time that I really felt as if I was choosing me was when my son came to me, and he was about 16. And he said to me, I was in a very toxic relationship. We had split and come back, because the average, abused person, it takes them 7 times to leave a relationship before it sticks.
Wow.
So, my son came to me and he said, like, he wouldn't talk to me, first of all, which was terrible. Like, as a mom, that is probably the worst thing. And he said, I don't understand why you keep letting him back. Like, he's threatened to kill you, he's threatened to kill me. I've lost my childhood. And, maybe that was the first time I put myself first. Yeah. So, honestly, was it me? I felt in that moment that if I couldn't put myself first, that I had to put them first. And where I had been like dancing around stuff and pretending that I was keeping it separate and they didn't know, and I was being a buffer. In that moment, I had to really recognize that I wasn't being the mom I wanted to be.
Yeah. That buffer piece, when you realize how much, I think we sometimes forget how much kids absorb in the environment that's around them. And they are much more attuned sometimes than I think we give them credit for. And what a moment, as a mom and as a woman to hear this, but also, kudos to your son for having the courage and loving you in a way that he was willing to make that really brave step, on your behalf. And you responded. I think you should give yourself credit for that. You responded. It was a wake up moment, which this goes nicely into, setting healthy boundaries. You realized this cycle for you, your kids could not continue. There had to be, what you maybe didn't realize it at the time, but some healthy boundaries put into place for your preservation, the recognition of calling this relationship what it was.
Yeah, agreed. And I think, I have never really pondered over like generational, that generations of people, but one thing that really has caught my eye lately in looking over the landscape of what I do as a human being and what we do as human beings.
Yeah.
There were many years when I would tell my kids like, oh, he's just joking, or he didn't mean that, or, and in doing that, I convinced them that their experience was not valid, that they didn't have a right to feel how they were feeling because they were just being silly or overlooking it. And, then the courts came in and did the same thing, with this reunification counseling. They tell kids like, your experience is not your own. You just play nice. You have to have this and it is what it is. And I think we teach kids the very worst things about boundaries because we teach them. It's almost as if you can't have boundaries until you turn 16 and then boundaries are out,
Wow.
Why we think that little kids can't feel and have alarms and internal, all these things, why they're not allowed to experience them until some magic age, societally is to me just kind of crazy. We should be teaching them very young that their experience matters, that their feelings are valid, that they need to hold boundaries. Cause I think that's what happened to me. My parents are very, stop crying, get over yourself, and that's what we teach them is just, shove it inside and keep moving.
Yeah. That's a script we get when we're very young as kids, especially as little girls. Be quiet, be polite, be kind, put everybody else before you. Don't be a distraction. The term I used to hear, if I was crying and my parents didn't know what to do with it, I would dry it up. Like your feelings aren't valid here. You don't get to cry. No, we don't want any of your quote unquote nonsense, whatever it was. And so, then it's no wonder you've got all these feelings, you've got all these things, you've watched these relationships, you've grown up in these homes where they didn't know what to do with their emotions, let alone yours. And so it's understandable how we can end up in these really dangerous, toxic relationships because it just continues that trend. And so I love what you said about let's validate and allow these kids to name their feelings. Let's teach them how to walk through them and acknowledge them and, not stuff them. And let's model that for them because, the conversation you had with your son is a classic example. You can say all the words you want to say. They're going to remember what they saw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. And it builds a familiarity because we all like to feel when we're in something that's familiar, we're comfortable. That doesn't make
Mhm.
it safe. It doesn't make it healthy. And in fact,
Yeah.
if you grow up in a house that is very dysfunctional, you learn that dysfunctional is normal and safe. And,
Mhm.
and nobody has a perfect upbringing, and I'm by no way, fostering that. Nor am I saying that if a child is acting out inappropriately, that it's not
Sure.
our duty as adults to say, like, that is not, I'm sorry that you feel that way, but you need to work through this.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that, there, in seeing my own situation, and, my first marriage was so healthy. We got along, we were able, and unfortunately I lost him very early on.
Yeah.
When my children were very young. And, I often think that what a difference it would have made in their world growing up in that household versus the one
Yeah.
that we then jumped to.
Yeah. I want to stay there for a minute. You hit something very important that I think we don't talk about enough. When you have that tragic loss of someone unexpectedly, so young, it is not uncommon to see people enter into another relationship fairly soon. And you're in a very vulnerable state. You're trying to manage this grief and your family and find your footing again. And sadly, there are a lot of people out there that will prey on that. And so talk to me about, because this, like you said, you had that healthy relationship that we look for the first time around. But talk to me how that played a role too, and how you ended up in this abusive, toxic relationship.
So I lost my first husband to cancer. So, every loss is different. Every means to get there is different. But I watched him literally die for 16 months. I lost a piece of him every day. And when you're a caregiver, especially young, I was juggling children, I was juggling him. And after he died, I didn't really understand survivor's guilt. Like, I thought survivor's guilt was, somebody makes it out of the Twin Towers. And so for those 16 months, not only did he believe that I could save him, I started to believe it, because you get this false sense of being able to save someone. So I came out of that after 16 months, and I had so much guilt for lying to him, because I would lie and say, like, oh, we're going to chemo. Sure. And it started feeling almost like a cruel joke.
Yeah.
So I know, even though I necessarily had to do those things, like wishing that he wasn't around anymore because he was suffering so badly.
Yeah.
You come out of that situation, and if you don't unpack all those feelings, like, I really did not like myself. I felt like I let him down. I felt like I lied to him. I felt like I could have saved him if I tried harder, that I didn't spend enough time with him. But these were not conscious thoughts. It wasn't like that is how I felt. But getting into the second relationship was completely right for someone to basically tell me all the things I was already feeling myself. You're not a good mom. You're not a good person. Nobody likes you. You're, emotionally too much. You're whatever it was.
Yeah.
I felt like I deserved it. I truly felt like he was mirroring all the things that I felt about myself. And I think that that's a trap you can fall into if you don't understand how you yourself feel. And I didn't.
Sure.
I had no idea that I was carrying all of that baggage.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I know that's a really vulnerable space, but I think it's important to talk about it, because it's important for women to be aware of this, and to be aware of this when they go through these experiences. And caregiving is hard. And it is so many times. And I have a couple of friends that have been on here that have been and are caregivers and have resources now. Lynette Weldon and my friend Erin Copeland's been on with me several times, both on the podcast and panels. And we talk all the time about how to take care of the person who is sick, but we don't talk about how to take care of the caregiver. And so the caregiver is left with all these unresolved thoughts and emotions, many of them are not true, but they need to be spoken and worked through so you can get to the truth. You can heal. And then sadly, again, there are other people out there who have not done the work, who will feed into that. So if there's somebody, so just be mindful of that and aware of that and really caring for yourself through that, and also being kind to yourself and not beating up on yourself when you do make those decisions, because you're just trying to find a place to breathe and survive.
Yeah. And I think too, you stop talking to people, it was like, it went on for so long that if I was even capable of going out and seeing a friend, or somebody stopped by, or, the last thing I wanted to do is wear my tragedy or my bad feelings. Like I wanted to be the old Julie. So I hid those things about myself because I felt like nobody wanted to hear them anyway. So they just like sit with you, and you are no longer an authentic human. You are playing a part, and you're being whoever that person that you're with needs you to be at that moment, not who you need to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And you lose yourself in that. I mean, it really does become that story. So talk to me about what it's been like to move out of that and to get to the space that you are now, where you truly do. You have set healthy boundaries in your relationships, what you will and won't tolerate, seeking the healing you need. What has it been like to move into that space?
Again, I think I'm still moving into that space.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, I think that after I lost Colin, I felt like I couldn't do it alone. That was my biggest thing.
Yeah.
And then when I found out that I was actually doing it alone, the only difference is, someone was sabotaging me. So making it harder to do it on my own. I feel as if somebody comes into my life now, if they add to my life and they fulfill what, me, then I'm more than happy to accept them into my life. But, I have a really hard time, opening up to people still. So unless you give me the space, I tend to like kind of, step back a little bit and read the room a little bit and decide who I think, I'm not about shallow talk anymore. Like I can't live in a world of small talk. And that really limits me because I almost want to get in depth so quickly that I think it's like, the people around me are not like that. They've not lived that experience where they're ready to deep dive like the minute you meet them. Yeah. So, I think that I've been a little more discerning about who I put my energy into, and not in a bad way,
right.
Yeah. Like I will speak to anybody and spend time with anyone. I guess, like I said, I'm very quick if I feel like somebody is not good for me, and that has nothing to do with them. That's me. If somebody's not good for me, at singling them out, like right at the gate, instead of, because where the old me would be like, oh, well, they don't like me, I'm going to work really hard so they do. That was the way I used to be, oh, if you don't like me. In fact, I used to pick people out that didn't like me to prove to myself maybe that I could make them like me. And I don't do that anymore. If somebody doesn't like me, I'm like, I find somebody who does really quick, instead of, that was for some reason my thing was always to try and like prove that I was worthy of, the grumpiest person in the room. And I think that's probably, validation of trying to prove I'm a good person. And I think now I believe I am. Instead of always looking to somebody else to say, what do you think? You think I'm a good person? That was for many, many years. I saw myself as a reflection of whatever someone else thought of me. And I don't really do that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. And you started trusting yourself. You started trusting your intuition. You recognized your value. And I think it's so, you talked about being discerning. People that are safe, people that are trustworthy, people that are worthy of your time, and treating yourself in that way. Thank you so much for that. Talk to me about emotional, mental, spiritual, physical health connections. You talk, how, as you were going through this process, were you able to see how the mental and emotional was taking a toll on the physical and vice versa. Talk to me about those connections that happened for you.
So I used to, when Colin was sick, and really, I have a special needs daughter too. So I went through many surgeries with her early. It's been a long ride.
Yeah.
But my thing was always, I was a runner. I was born running. I don't know what it was. When I was 11, I would go off running. My parents would be like, "Where are you going?" And I'd be like, "Running." And they'd say, "Why?" And I'd go, "I don't know." But when I was in my second relationship, I literally could not run to the mailbox, where I used to run 10 miles every other day.
Yeah.
It was so debilitating that I couldn't get out of bed. I was taking muscle relaxers. They said I had fibromyalgia. My spine was physically twisting. I would go to orthopedic surgeons and they would have no explanation for it. I was having a hard time breathing. Like I don't know if anyone can relate to this, but when you have the flu and you're just like on your lap, you're like literally crawling to the bathroom and just like trying to find that last piece of energy because you're so sick. That is how I felt for many years. Like I would wake up feeling bottomed out, like I don't even want to do this day. And of course that took its emotional toll on me, where I became very hypervigilant. Everything was a big deal. Everything was too much for me. One small thing would just be like the camel. And so I was very reactive too. And so I had all that going on, and, it's amazing. I'm 3 years out and I no longer take a single medication. I can run 5 miles again. I don't have fibromyalgia. I'm not even like, my muscles aren't even tight. And I wake up in peace every morning, where I never thought I'd find peace again.
Yeah. Wow. And you are not the first woman I have talked to about this on this platform that has had these experiences. I've had multiple guests on this platform that have been in abusive and difficult relationships who talk about the same thing. And the minute they get their freedom back, the minute they get their selves back, they start healing. And I think it goes back to, as practitioners, as healthcare providers, got to be mindful about the questions we're asking to help the patients make the connect points and be that lifeline. But we don't ask enough questions. We just try to throw a prescription at it or a diagnosis, and we don't have all the information. And I think that's just a place that really needs so much improvement. But it's remarkable to me how many people I've had this conversation with. I mean, I had my own experience with this when I hit my wall at age 50. And mine was as a result of a lot of stuffed traumas and feelings that went all the way back to my very early childhood, that the habits that I learned. You talk about the hypervigilance piece. You don't know how to discern between the tiger actually chasing you versus a little mouse that ran around the corner and ran out the door. Isn't really a big deal.
Right.
I mean, you don't know how everything feels like it's up here. Your cortisol levels are so blown out of the water that you're having these physical impacts. And so I think it's just paying attention to that, listening to our bodies, and be like, okay, what's happening here? I am really lit up. What's happening around me? Whether it's the space I'm in, the relationships I'm in, the workplace I'm in, whatever it is, what's happening that is fueling this? And I think those are questions we have to be really mindful of asking. So thank you for sharing your experience with that. I think that's going to be really helpful. And a lot of women are going to be like, oh, wait a minute. I'm having that experience too. Supporting yourself and other women in living unapologetically. I really feel like this is where your work is really a cornerstone of this talking point. You learned to show up for you. You chose your family. You made the change. You are, and we are all in process. I mean, we talk about this all the time. I had to learn that I was going to constantly be healing and evolving for the rest of my life. This wasn't going to be like this thing that like, oh, everything's good now. I went to therapy for 6 months and I never will be anxious about anything again. And, I mean, that's just not how it works. Plus, there's just things that happen to us that are so deep seated that there's going to be different things that trigger it. Sometimes expectedly, sometimes unexpectedly. It's going to be that next layer. I call them layers that we're going to have to confront and dig into a little bit and be welcoming to and curious about, rather than judgmental and trying to stuff it. But as you have taken this walk, and you have not only taken care of you and your kids, but you have resources now for other women. You've written a book. Talk to me about that decision to write the book and become a resource to other women.
Well, the first book that I wrote, it's called Notes from a Blackberry. And that book I wrote when Colin was actually, when we found out he had chemo, they gave him 2 weeks to live. And so they did one of these, like, go home, tell your children goodbye. Our youngest was 6 months. Our oldest was 10. Wow. And so we would go down to chemo together. And he was so sick that he didn't want me moving around. So I had a Blackberry, and I started writing my special needs daughter's story because it was unimaginable. She was born, she has something called primordial dwarfism. They didn't know what it was. And any malpractice that you could possibly imagine happened. 3 years of traveling around the country, So I was unpacking all of that while I was sitting with him. Wow. And I also realistically knew that he probably was not going to make it. So I started telling our story, him and myself, because we met in grammar school. He's my first test.
Yeah.
So I actually wrote it, and it sat on my laptop for 12 years. And I pieced it all together. I would email it, and then I pieced it together. And it wasn't until I got divorced that I sat down and I had the courage to read it. And when I read it, when I got to the end of it, it was like, there was this epiphany that went off in my head. Like, I gave it to other people as well. And they said, like, I had no idea how lonely you were. And ironically enough, if someone had asked me at that time, like, what are you feeling? Are you lonely? I would have said, no, not at all. But that's what hindsight is about. So in reading it, I recognize that as a young caregiver, I was helping, I released it so that other people hopefully will read the book, see that I was doing everything I possibly could. And if they're willing to give me the grace to say, wow, this woman's really a hero, that they will look at their own situation, do the same. Or if they have somebody in their life who's going through it, we'll look at them a little bit more differently, because what goes on behind closed doors in the day-to-day stuff of a caregiver, you can't even, I always liken it to like when you're pregnant and like 9 months, people come to you and they're like, oh my gosh, it went by so quick. You're like, oh yeah, maybe for you.
Did it?
But not, but not so much for me. So that's kind of why I wrote it, because when we are in impossible situations, we do things that we never thought we would, whether that's good or bad. And we've got to give ourselves the grace to know that if we made the decisions we did with, the best of intentions, even if they don't work out the way that we want them to.
Yeah.
And then the second book is called From Blackberries to Thorns, and that will be coming out soon. And that is meeting my second husband, 10 years of really just diabolical, torturous moments. And again, I didn't write it for the salaciousness of it, but I did write it so that, I might have stayed in that relationship forever if I did not have, my son come to me, if I did not, just finally get to a part where it just couldn't do it anymore. And I know there are so many women out there right now who are stuck in these situations, and they're Googling every day. How do I can't take, I would Google every day. How do I save my relationship? I went to therapist after therapist trying to fix me so that I could fix us. And just really threw so much energy and time and refused to acknowledge what was right in front of me. And so afraid to leave I was so afraid it would get worse that I stayed in my worst case scenario.
Wow. You are, like I said, when we started this, you were telling the story of so many women, but my God, when I think about what you were going through, you had this special needs child, this husband with cancer, plus your other children and yourself. That is so much. And I hope you can see, as you are moving forward, the courage that it's taken you to show up every day, and the courage that it took you to not only hear what your son said, but take action. And I mean, and I think it would have been not easy from how you were being treated, but we tend to get comfortable and we're afraid, and we're so hard on ourselves and we're so judgmental that we're afraid to get curious and think about what would happen if I did this? What would happen if I shifted this? And you decided to take that shift and make that shift. And so thank you for that. Thank you for your courage and sharing, and for writing these books. I have a feeling both of them, the one that's already been released and the new one, will meet women where they are. Sometimes we don't need the how-to. We just need somebody that's like, oh, wow, she gets it. She was there too. I'm not the only one. And that can be the lifeline that they need. And to me, that has been the way, for my view, the way you have shown up unapologetically for yourself, and also as an invitation to others to follow you, come with you. You can do this too.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Where my passion really lies is, there's so many like organizations out there that, if you need to flee your home, if you have no resources, and I think that's fantastic. But for women who are stuck in my position, they stay because they have to, because you're not running from anything. You can't say I've been physically abused because you haven't. Emotional abuse isn't a thing. You drive around in your car in your house and you think I'm going to have to, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
And, no one should ever, I put my children in some really tough spots out of fear, out of people telling me I had to, the court system, my lawyers. Yeah. And I never want any child to be, compromised, their safety to be compromised because a woman doesn't have resources. Like if you say that enough times, that should never be a thing in America, anywhere, that you are not allowed to protect your child because you don't have enough money to do it.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So that's really where,
I think this is where your why and your values really come into play, which has led you to where you are now in starting this nonprofit and becoming the resource, the place they can come to get all of these questions and fears answered. So talk to me about the decision to do that.
I don't even know how when my first husband died, it's called the Colin James Barth Outreach. It's named after him, which, a lot of people ask me why a female organization is named after a man. And my answer to them is because he would have done anything in the world to stay here and protect us. And the thought that his name is being attached to something that's helping protect people that have been in my shoes would mean the world to him.
Yeah.
When he died, I said to him, something good is going to come from this. Like, I refuse to just let this go. Like your fight, your courage, all of it. And Tatum too, my special needs daughter. Yeah. So when I went through my divorce and, I really did lose everything. But again, I would live in a trailer park. Everything I thought I was going to lose that I did lose, I found out I really didn't need to begin with. And it probably was the very thing keeping me stuck.
Sure.
But it was at that point where, when the courts came to me and they said to me, basically, these children are no longer yours. You cannot make a decision about your own children. You must take them to therapy for reunification, which to reunify something that was never unionized to begin with, for them to tell me that how I had to speak about, them being with their father, for, the common sense of all of it, it's just the lack of control. And, I am not a person that was fleeing my house. I am not, someone who gives up easily, I suppose. Yeah. And I am somebody that believes that like, it's worth fighting for. if I were so inclined to really, not have resources, to not have support, to not have that inner strength, like those people just, they hit these hard times and they just don't have it within them. And really the people that get stuck in all of this are the children. And then years and years of women feeling guilty and shameful for not being able to protect their kids when it's not their fault. Like they're doing everything they can. In society, I just feel like it's our duty. Who has a more important position in this world than a mother or a parent? That is the most important job. And the fact that we don't value it, that we don't, honor it, that we think it's okay just because of, legal reasons or DNA or whatever we want to classify as mom and dad is okay to manipulate children to do what we want them to do. It just shouldn't be a thing. So obviously you can tell I'm passionate about it, but my children are my world. And I don't know many mothers who wouldn't say the same thing. And they should never be in a position where they feel as if they've lost control over to protect their own kids. That's your number one job. And when someone takes that job away and makes you sit on the sidelines, it is so devastating.
Yeah. I think too, you have pointed out, and it's so important that we go back to this, the flaws in our systems that exist to this day when it comes to our children and to women. The systems are so flawed, they don't protect us. I have a friend who does research for this and has the statistics to show that these systems are failing women and children time and time again, and driving them many times to desperate measures because of how they've been failed. And we've got to continue to talk about that. And this, and this is so much a part of what it speaks to the empath in you. It speaks to the passion in you. It speaks to your desire to take care of and make sure those that you love are well. And so thank you for being willing to step up and be a resource. One of my favorite things about women, I get to share these stories time and time again of seeing a gap based on our experiences and being the solution, and being part of wait a minute, this doesn't have to be this way. And I can help fill a gap. I can be an answer. And that's what you've done here. So thank you so much we'll talk more a little bit before we wrap up about the different things that you're able to offer. This is still, pretty fresh and new for you, but I wanted to spend some time on that because I think it's so important. In living out of your own expectations versus others, this is something you have moved to. You are no longer, taking what other people say about you and letting that decide how your life goes. You have changed the narrative for yourself here. Talk to me about that transition and what it feels like to be able to do that today.
It feels very foreign. I hope as time goes on, it feels a little less foreign. But, the thing about who your essence is, and my essence is, I'm a people pleaser. And I used to think that was a horrible thing. And I'm okay with it now because I think it doesn't show weakness. If I'm willing, I will go above and beyond for everyone that I love, even people that I don't love.
Yeah.
Because I feel as if, when they go through hard times, you just want to put it in your past. You're like, I'm so glad that was over.
Yeah.
But if we all just stopped and you don't have to devote your life to it or open up a charity, but if you just see one little injustice, and I am one of those people that just believes in justice should be squashed. I don't know why. Maybe my Irish mother. But, if we all just did our part to make one little change in whatever we've experienced, the world would just be such an incredibly kinder place. And, as women, I know that people really make us feel as if we're all in competition with one another. And we're, I don't think we are. I think we're all in the same boat. And I think if there's a lot of competition in the workplace, it's because only one makes it. There has to be competition in the workplace. It's not innate in us.
Right.
So, when it comes to taking back the power, I wake up every day And I will say, I think I'm working full time for free. I'm putting myself out there. I'm those are the negative things that I tell myself in the morning, and then I'll open up my email. Or I actually have 2 women who are living with me right now. One is pregnant, has nowhere else to go. Her boyfriend kicked her out. The other is a 24-year-old who her husband stole her child, and we were lucky enough to get her child back.
Wow.
So, I will say I worried a lot about what people would think of me, and it kept me stuck in the relationship I was in. I was afraid because he was telling everyone I was crazy. I looked crazy. I was acting crazy. And I was on a podcast and I saw somebody posted a reel of me talking with the podcast. By the way, it's called the Scarlet Edit. It's really good. But someone posted, she is crazy. Look at her. I feel sorry for her husband. And if I had saw that comment 2 years ago, I would have shriveled. I mean, I would have been probably in my room in the corner crying. Oh my gosh, people are going to think. And I just kind of, there was that moment of, oh gosh, well, maybe I am. And I would have spiraled so much, but I'm on the other side of it now. And you can think I'm crazy. I'm okay with that. I know I'm not crazy. You can think whatever you want about me. Someone said to me a while ago, which I think is a great phrase, like, what people think of you is none of your business. And that is how I've tried to conduct myself. Like, if you think I'm crazy, if you think that I'm a bad person, then you don't know me, because if you knew what was in my heart and if you knew why I was doing what I was doing, it's not to put people down. It's not to say men are bad. It's not, I'm doing nothing but trying to make the world a better place. The only way I know how, which is in my experience, what I've seen go wrong. That's why I'm on the path I am. Yeah. So, I guess my power lies in, if I can change one person's world, and I mean that sincerely, then I've made a difference, because all of the stuff I've been through, if I didn't make something good come of it, then it would be very hard for me to feel sorry for myself, or, feel down, or to miss the people like Colin in my life. But it's meaningful. There's a reason why I'm on the path I am. And I think sometimes we fight against the universe. And I was just saying this to the girl who moved in, because it's very fresh in her head. And she was like, why did he do that? Why does he? And I said, we are all here to learn a lesson. And if we don't learn that lesson, we will continue to be put in that position until we do learn the lesson. And that means suffering over and over and over again, until you just say, okay, I'm listening. I got it. I'm going to do something about it. And that's the way I see everybody's place here, is like, you are destined to repeat the same horrible cycles until you see that you're supposed to learn a better way to do it. And when you do, I believe it's your duty to help other people who are struggling the same way you did, hasten their learning. Yeah. Because you see the other side of it. I'm on the other side, and I haven't forgotten how horrible it is to be stuck in it. I haven't forgotten how scary it is. I haven't forgotten that it really is dangerous. But I also am on the other side of it, knowing that I could not have continued on that path, and nobody can. And it's life or death. It's not just like, oh, you're living a miserable life. When an emotional abuser turns physical, or they don't even, it only takes once. It really only takes. Gabby Petito is a perfect example. It only takes once. And I don't ever want someone to be in that position because they feel like they don't have a way out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. I think so important. And I think it's that when you can get to that understanding of, take the troll who said the comment, they've got their own healing journey they clearly haven't done. And that is all about them and nothing about us. But that can be really hard when we don't know our own value. And you've been able to move into a place where you do understand that you are able to separate the truth from just the garbage, from, from people that are clearly, have their own healing to do. And also learning that you talked about earlier, being in therapy to help yourself so you could save your relationship. No one person can save a relationship. No one person can save another person. we can only do our best to take care of ourselves. And when we can release that responsibility to carry the whole weight of it, that can be really freeing too.
Yeah. And you're not doing them any favors because, and I said this, she said, oh, well, he's out having fun tonight. I said, I can guarantee you he is not having fun. For whatever reason, he continues to treat people this way. He is not happy with himself. He is not happy at all in life. And he's hurting other people to make himself numb. So, it's all in your perspective of it. And the longer you enable somebody to be that way, you're literally hurting them more by not making them accountable. Whether they change after you leave them or not is not your responsibility either. Maybe they'll continue to be a terrible person even more.
For sure.
But at least you are not responsible for it anymore, and you can find your own peace.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Embracing your layers. I talk about a lot with the women I work with and on this show about the importance of embracing our layers, all the pieces and parts that make up our story, the parts we don't love, the parts we do, and really replacing judgment with curiosity. Talk to me about, this has really unfolded for you the last 3 years, I think especially. Talk to me about your layers journey and what it's been like to be able to do that, to trade out the judgment for curiosity and empathy.
After going through it, the two different books, again, it's Notes from a Blackberry and From Blackberries to Thorns. It's the same character in both of them. Yeah. But if you were to read the second book first, I think you'd be astonished to read the first book and vice versa. And the reason I say that is because in the first book, it's like I'm this heroine to everybody. I'm the mother, I'm the protector, I'm the caregiver. I'm doing everything I can. And in the second book, it's a completely different person. Now, it's not that I'm not doing the same thing. I'm just making different choices. And I have somebody in my life who's different than the first. Yeah. So, when you're talking about layers and why people do what people do, how many times did people in my position get asked, why did you stay? You stayed for so many complex reasons. And that's why, I always go back to the first book, because would I have gotten into the second relationship if I hadn't had the trauma of the first? I don't know. My guess is I would have, because I am the same person, regardless of making it through that. But I think, again, that I used to, I hated that I was a pleaser, because I always felt like, that people took advantage of me, or that I wasn't strong enough to stand up for myself. But when push came to shove in both scenarios, when I had to stand up for myself, I did, and I could. Yeah. And that really proves to me that being a pleaser is not a weak thing. It's not that I'm lacking. It's not that I don't have, self-esteem. It's not, I am trying to curb a little bit of that, because you can only give so much of yourself before you have nothing left for you.
Exactly.
But I also don't want people to harden themselves, Yeah. I do find this tear in myself. I don't give people the same benefit of the doubt I used to, or I'm quick to judge, probably quicker more than I used to be. Yeah. But now I have that conscious thought of, being discerning, but also trying to find out why. But the difference is that I'm not trying to fix it anymore. Because that was always my thing. Like, I was trying to figure out why my ex-husband was so awful and why. And I was always making allowances. Like, oh, he had a bad upbringing. Oh, he's really hurt. Like, you can still feel that way for people, and you can still give them empathy, and you can still, but don't give so much of yourself trying to fix somebody else, because you will literally break yourself doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a good point there, because all those things, they could have had the bad, they also get to choose how they're going to move forward with that. They can get therapy. They don't have to stay in that space. They can get resources to help them heal. That's a conscious choice that they're making. And so it's like, you don't have to abandon yourself to try to save someone who's not willing to do the work on themselves.
Yeah. You should never have to.
Never.
I remember someone saying something about fighting for a relationship. And my first thought after all of this is, why would you ever fight for a relationship? And it's not working.
Yeah.
Find somebody who's better for you and for them. Because if you're not getting along with someone, neither one of you are happy. You're doing them no favors sticking around trying to make them better.
Yeah.
Because you're not. You're just making you both worse.
Absolutely.
Whatever you think you have above the person you're with, that it's your job to make them a better person. That's a complex thought in and of itself. And I do think that I had some of that. Like, I don't know why I thought that I was so, capable of making somebody else better when I couldn't even figure out my own stuff. So I guess that's the thing, is like, if you're feeling that way, focus on what's driving you rather than what's driving them. You can figure out their issues later. Figure out why you feel a need to put yourself below somebody else to help them rather than bringing out the best in yourself.
Yeah, that curiosity, curious about where this is coming from. Is this coming from a healthy place? What is driving this? That's so important. Thank you so much. That's such great wisdom for people to apply in any of these situations you run into with relationships. And this goes really nicely into, you have really come into this season of what I call living out F.E.E.L, finding empowerment, embracing layers. You've talked about already how that has impacted not only your relationship with yourself, but how discerning you are in terms of your relationships with other people. Asking yourself why, why is this judgment coming up? Is this person safe? You've learned that. Is there anything else you want to add to that of what's changed for you, not only in how you see yourself, but in your relationships?
I don't know. Again, and I'm working on this now.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes you can do too much of a backlash. I think that I'm so quick now to be like, nope, that's no good for me. My boundaries have become so prominent that sometimes I think I need to be a little less forgiving and remember that human beings are all fallible. Like, no one is perfect. And, I really am trying to work on like things you can live with, things that you can't live with, and things that you really can't live without. And human connection and being connected to someone, like, I forget what it's like to be I always say, like, I'm feral. Like people ask me all the time. And I'm like, I've been in like such a bad relationship for like, I'm literally feral. Like, I'm not sure that I could ever be, but no, I hope that doesn't change me forever, because the amount of love and support and security that I felt in my first marriage is something I hope everybody out there will find, will embrace, and can experience. Because when you find that right person, they don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be the best looking or have. It's about literally finding one person that completes you. Not that you need to complete you, but that is your end point. I always feel like, we all
complement each other. You make each other's life more complete. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess if there's one thing that I can say is, I always try not to let my second experience taint. If I let go of that piece of myself that's willing to be vulnerable in a relationship, then I kind of feel like he's won. And I don't want to do that. So I'm trying to get back to that vulnerable spot, because once you, I always say the reason why blackberries have thorns is because it's to protect the beautiful parts of it. But, I'm trying to like maybe dull up my thorns a little bit. So,
yeah. Thank you for that. So, and I think it's important to point out, and you and I talked about this when we met the first time. Your first husband, you guys went way back. You grew up together, and then you came back together a little bit later, but you had that trust, you had that bond, but also I think it's for you such a good reminder of like, I know what healthy looks like. I am being able to tap back into that part of yourself.
Yeah.
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 Absolutely.
Someone was asking me yesterday if I had any advice for people who are stuck in these relationships that don't ever get any better. And so the 24-year-old girl that I already spoke of, she sent me a video a while ago, and it was of herself when she was breaking down and really at her lowest point. She had, done the same 7-time breakup and back together. And she recorded herself, and it broke my heart. She was talking to herself, and she was saying like, look at me right now. This is what you need to remember. And I think that it's important for all of us to do something like that, to both when we're in a good place and when we're not in a good place, because it's so easy when the pendulum swings to forget the other side of it and to excuse things that you shouldn't, because in that moment it feels right and it feels good. Yeah. So, maybe to make a video diary of like what you will accept and what you won't when you're at your happiest or when you're at your least happy, so that you have that to go back to, remind yourself of what's really important and what happens when you overlook something, or what happens when you don't take an opportunity that you should.
Yeah. Clarity on those non-negotiables. Yeah. Really.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We're getting ready to wrap up here. Tell me 5 activities that nourish you.
Probably vacationing with my kids. Love that. My dogs, even though they've been getting very naughty lately. I'm a huge exercise person. So anytime I can get outdoors and run, I love nothing more than just to have like a quiet evening, sitting down, discussing, the end of your day with the person who means the most to you. Is that 4? And 5, finally having my house cleaned. Not by me. Not by me.
What a gift. I know that's such a wonderful thing, especially when you got kids running around. Oh man.
It is.
That is a powerful gift. I love that. 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
Peaceful, motivated, enthusiastic, safe, and warm, because it's freezing in my house right now.
Yes, I know. Oh my gosh. It's not good when the heat's not working. Oh my goodness. Tell people a little bit more about the services that are offered through your nonprofit and how they can get access to that.
So as I think you mentioned earlier, we're kind of in our infancy. My original thought was I want to give mortgages. And then once I really got into it, as we spoke earlier, there are so many services out there that you don't even know about. But when you hit crisis, you don't have time to Google it, fill out applications, whatever you can or you're not eligible for, you don't have time to figure it out. So you go straight to the government. The government's like, well, when you lose everything, come back. Yeah. So what we're trying to do is build databases of the landscape of charitable organizations out there, from, people that will take your dog and foster them until you find a new home, these little things that you don't know about. So when you come to our organization, we listen to where you're at. We listen to your situation. And what we try to do is provide a roadmap for you. Like it's a concierge service where call these people, they'll pay for 3 months of your mortgage. Call these people. And for anything outlying that, we hope to bridge that gap and provide services. And usually that's legal fees, because unfortunately, that's not really covered by anybody. Yeah. But more importantly, I think, what I've found is just helping women feel like they can do it and they're not alone. I have people say to me all the time, like, I couldn't have done it without you. And my answer to them is always, you could have, but you lost yourself. And all I was a mirror that reminded you of what you were actually capable of, because you're so downtrodden, you're so beaten. It feels so unattainable. But when someone comes to you and says, as women, right? Just tell me what I got to do and I'll get it done. That is what our organization wants to do, is give you the roadmap, tell you who to call, set you up. And, that way you can focus where you really need to. Because unfortunately, when you hit, a crisis like a sick husband or divorce, that is when your children need you the most. Yeah, that is the time that you are distracted the most. You're looking for resources. You're doing a tailspin. And if we can just take out the major components so that you can just be present for your children, figure out your own emotions instead of being on high alert with everything, then, that's all we want to do, whether that's mentoring or providing resources, just taking apart your situation and helping you put it back together. And so if you go to my website, which is juliebarthauthor.com, there's tabs to reach out, to get involved, to donate. And then my daughter, who has special needs, her art is on there as well. And all the proceeds from the sale of her art go to fund the charity. So you can find it all in one place. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for that. And don't worry, listeners, that's going to be on our website at embracinglayers.com on our resources page. Julie Barth, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for how you show up in the world. You're incredible. I think your story is mind blowing. I think I told you the first time I met you, I'm like, I feel like I'm watching a Netflix movie or something. I mean, my gosh, what you have been through.
Stranger things have happened.
Yes.
You never know.
I know. No kidding. I think we need to talk to Reese Witherspoon about these books and, see if we can do something here. But I think the way you've taken these experiences and you've tapped back into who you are, and you're utilizing all of these strengths that you have to help and support other women. And it's beautiful. And I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for being with me today. So thankful to Julie Barth. Check out her resources. And if you're needing support in finding yourself, finding who you are, getting the strength, want to feel like you've got community, like we mentioned, Julie's resources are there. We're there to support you here at the Embracing Layers Network. Go to embracinglayers.com. I'm now offering services where I'm working with women one-on-one. I've got an online course. We have our book. Let's help you and get you in living your feel-fueled life. And then we've got all these resources in our network that we can point you to for that additional support you need. Take good care of yourselves this week. Remember, you have it all in you already. And we'll see you next time on the F.E.E.L Podcast. Hello, and thank you so much for being with us today on this episode of the F.E.E.L Podcast. If you would like more information on how you can apply these talking points that I share with our guests in each episode to your own life, really utilize this F.E.E.L framework, go to embracinglayers.com, fill out our contact form, and let's set up a free 30-minute consultation to talk about how you can start living your most authentic, organic, healthy, feel-fueled life. Thanks again for being with us today. We'll be back to you soon with another episode here on the F.E.E.L Podcast.